Hey everyone, so I just want to do an update now that we kind of got Xavier figured out. So Wednesday we went in to see Dr. Mike as per usual for our weekly visit. Xavier looked super good. He was acting like normal. We really didn't think anything was wrong, so we did his stats and they were 77. We definitely we're looking at him, we're like, no, that's not right. Like, he looks amazing. There's no issues, like he's not acting weird. We had discussed on the past 2 doctor's appointments that he was having a bit of diarrhea, so we were trying to figure it out with Lasix, like stopping them so that he could kind of get himself back organized so he didn't lose too much fluid. So we just figured that was the problem. So we went home and that was he was fine until about 7. Until then he was happy playing. We went for a really long walk. He was enjoying the walk. We saw grandparents, that sort of stuff. And then around 7, he started to look a bit blue, and I kind of questioned it. So I asked Brad if he thought he was blue. And then we went downstairs, or we asked Dana to come up and look at him to see if she thought he looked blue or purple, and she said yes. So at 7:30, we called into the hospital, said we were on our way. And then we got there and they had a huge team, which is fantastic. I think there was 4 or 5 nurses there, 2 EMS. Dr. Hamill and Dr. Mike were both there. And they went to work right away, trying to put oxygen on him right away, trying to get a line, an IV line in to get him some fluids. He, however, was so dehydrated that they couldn't. So they had to use I can't remember what it's called. It's like a IV that they put into the bone. So they drill into the bone of his leg, and then the fluids go in that way. They had to do it twice because the first one didn't stick. So both legs got one. And then they got fluids in that way. Got him a life flight from Brandon. So they had to stabilize him and get him from Verdun to Brandon. So we took the EMS and both doctors came with us. So we left Verdun at about 9:30, and then got to Brandon at 10:15, where they again had to kind of stabilize him once we got there. His sats were still really low. He was still really dehydrated, so they were working on getting him fluids. They got enough fluids into him on the way to Brandon to get an IV in his arm. So they got one into his arm, and they were giving him fluids there. They gave him some medications to kind of stop the pain, and kind of settle him down, some sedation, so that he would sleep. Because when you're a cardiac baby, you always do better when you're sleeping because you're not working so hard. It's better for them to be sleeping when they're really bad. And then, sorry, I'm just looking at my notes here, so I keep it going. So at 12:20, we got onto the plane to Winnipeg. The crew that came, it was Barb. Again, she took us to Edmonton, so it was nice to have someone we knew. And then at 1 o'clock, we landed in Winnipeg. 1:50, we were in the emergency room in Children's. They had to work on him again because he failed again. His sats were super, super low, low 60s. And they had to work on trying to get another line for him so they could try and get that one out of his leg, because those ones are really, really high risk for infection and they don't really like them, and they're only good for 24 hours. So they're not really viable to keep in kids. So the options that we were given was 3 things. 2 different types of blood thinners. So one is heparin, which we've been on before after surgery, that'll kind of kick out any blood clot that he might have had in the shunt, because they weren't sure why he was having such issues. The other issue was another blood thinner, which they kind of wanted to lean away from because it'll get rid of any clot in his body. So if he had a clot anywhere that was stopping bleeding in the brain, maybe, because that can happen and you don't even know what's happening, then it would cause the blood to start again bleeding worse because it just gets rid of any clot. Or the third was we would have to go for surgery in Edmonton. So they started the heparin to make sure that it would work. So he went on heparin right away. It seemed to work really well. They kept with the IV fluids. We went upstairs to PICU, which is like a surgical ward kind of thing where they recover. And we were under COVID because they didn't know if we're from a rural community, you're considered isolated because you don't live in Winnipeg. So they tested him for COVID, obviously came back negative. We've been isolating. There's no way he would get it. And so they ruled out a couple things. They did a CT scan for him on his brain, came back clean, no issues there. They did EKGs. They've done a couple echoes. Everything's come back clean. Everything looks really, really good. So they did a culture from his poop and his urine. Both came back clean. So we're kind of to the point where we're not sure what caused the dehydration, if it was the formula we were using mixed with the breast milk or what. But now he's just on straight formula because of all the stress, obviously. It's really hard to keep pumping and breastfeeding, so it's gone. So now we're just on formula, which is perfectly fine because he's getting what he needs. So we're hoping to get to a ward today or tomorrow and kind of get out of here by Friday, hopefully. If not, probably over the weekend, which would be really, really nice to get home. But obviously, he's our first priority. So right now, that's where we're at. I'll try and keep you guys updated. But overall, he's doing much, much better. Back to his normal color. He was playing, which if you follow us on Facebook, excuse me, you've already seen that. So yeah, he seems to be doing better. He's got his color back. They're working on getting some of the fluid off of him because they've kind of overhydrated him. He's got a feeding tube in, not a big deal. They're just trying to make sure he's actually eating enough and not working too hard because that can cause some issues too. Doctor says his heart looks perfect. The shunt looks really good. We're definitely not expecting him to have normal sats like he used to, like his 90s, and he'll be more low 70s, 80s. He's starting to outgrow the shunt, which we knew was going to happen, but right now it's kind of the perfect size for him, so we're starting to expect lower ones. They said if his sats don't stay up in the 70s, then they're going to do a cath, but as of right now, we think that he's doing really well heart-wise, so we're not really too worried. So that's where we're at now. So yeah, if we hear anything else, I'll definitely update you. Follow us on Instagram. I'll try and post him. My sisters tell me I post too much of him, so I was trying not to post a lot on there. So yeah, obviously on our Facebook, we're updating. Brad and my mom are sharing everything, so you guys can see it there. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, leave them below and I'll try and answer them. But overall, he seems to be doing a million times better, so that's awesome. All right, guys, so we'll talk to you later. Bye.